The United Nations General Assembly is where world leaders gather in New York to tackle global crises. This year, the 80th session carried extra weight, with the world facing war in Ukraine, Middle East tensions, and fierce debates over climate and migration. The main focus, the return of U.S. President Donald Trump to the world stage. His America First approach had already shifted global politics, and leaders were eager to hear if he'd double down or pivot. The UN itself was under scrutiny, with many questioning its ability to solve today's complex challenges. Trump's speech was seen as a test for the future of international alliances and the U.S. role in the world. As delegates filled the hall, anticipation was high. Journalists prepared to capture every word. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had warned of a crisis in global cooperation. Trump's address was viewed as a possible turning point, either deepening divisions or offering a new path. The world watched, waiting for the president to reveal his vision. The stakes had rarely felt higher. President Trump approached the podium to a tense, expectant silence. He announced his teleprompter was broken, and used it as a metaphor for the UN, broken and ineffective. Abandoning his script, Trump launched into an unscripted, rally-style speech. He jumped from topic to topic, mixing personal stories with sharp critiques. He mocked windmills, referenced Obama's carbon footprint, and made offbeat claims about cows. The audience, usually quick to react, sat in stony silence, analyzing every word. Trump pointed to a broken escalator in the building as another symbol of UN dysfunction. He boasted about ending 7 wars in his first term, without UN help. The technical glitch became the speech's central theme. The world's problems, like the teleprompter, needed fixing. The address was raw, unpredictable, and left world leaders on edge. The silence in the hall spoke volumes. Trump's off-the-cuff style made the moment feel less like diplomacy, more like a global showdown. Everyone wondered what he'd say next. Trump's harshest words targeted global migration. He accused the UN of encouraging chaos and undermining Western nations by funding mass migration. He warned that unchecked migration threatened the culture and security of the West. Trump called for strict border controls, rejecting what he called the globalist agenda. He cited his own administration's tough policies as a model, insisting border enforcement was a matter of national survival. He described the UN's migration stance as inherently evil, a jarring claim in the diplomatic setting. Trump framed the debate as sovereignty versus destructive globalism. He dismissed the idea that wealthy nations had a duty to accept migrants, drawing a sharp line between his America First philosophy and the UN's multilateralism, the message every nation must put its own people first. In a dramatic shift, Trump pledged unwavering support for Ukraine against Russia. He declared the U.S. would back Ukraine to the very end, rejecting any peace that left Russian-occupied territory in Moscow's hands. On social media, he went further, suggesting Ukraine could reclaim all its land, including Crimea. This was a clear signal to Kyiv and Moscow. The U.S. now supported a complete Ukrainian victory. In a private meeting, Trump urged NATO to consider shooting down Russian aircraft violating Allied airspace. He criticized European allies for buying Russian energy, arguing it funded the war. Trump's hawkish stance surprised many, as he'd previously questioned U.S. aid to Ukraine. The pivot reassured allies and warned the Kremlin. Instead of advocating withdrawal, Trump positioned the U.S. as a defender of Ukrainian sovereignty. The world took note of this unexpected turn. On climate change, Trump's tone was openly mocking. He called global warming a hoax and dismissed climate science as a con job. Trump argued that green policies hurt Western economies and only benefited polluters like China and India. He claimed environmental regulations simply shifted jobs overseas without helping the planet. Trump rejected the idea of urgent global action, framing climate policy as an economic threat. He made it clear the U.S. would not join international climate agreements. His words signaled a return to fossil fuels and deregulation. The message: the U.S. would be an obstacle, not a partner, in the fight against climate change. On the Middle East, Trump rejected the UN's push for a two-state solution, calling it a reward for terrorism. He stood firmly with Israel and criticized Western nations recognizing a Palestinian state. Trump touted his own direct diplomacy, announcing talks with Arab leaders to secure the release of captives in Israel. He reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions, citing a recent operation against Iranian facilities. Trump then launched a scathing attack on the UN, mocking its bureaucracy and lack of action. He argued the UN promoted harmful globalist agendas and failed to solve real problems. Trump contrasted his record, ending wars without UN help, with the organization's ineffectiveness. He challenged the very relevance of the UN in the modern world. The world's response to Trump's speech was swift and polarized. Democratic leaders like Spain's Sanchez and Brazil's Lula began forming an alliance to defend democracy and multilateralism. Others used their own UN speeches to directly counter Trump. South Korea defended climate action, Colombia criticized his drug policies, and Muslim leaders condemned his stance on Israel. The speech reignited calls for UN reform, with South Africa's president highlighting the lack of African representation on the Security Council. Trump's attacks on the UN found unlikely echoes among leaders from the global South, who also saw the institution as failing. The address confirmed fears of a new era of American isolationism. UN Secretary-General Guterres' warnings about a crisis in global cooperation seemed prophetic. The world appeared to be splitting into rival blocs, autocracies, democracies, and an unpredictable U.S. Trump's fiery, unscripted speech was more than rhetoric. It signaled that the old rules of global politics no longer applied. The world was left to grapple with the fallout,